Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this Congressional District 5 debate. I'm Allison Zimmerman with KOAA News 5. I'll be your moderator this evening. Tonight, we're going to hear from the two Democratic candidates and two Republican candidates that are heading into their primary election on June 25th. Each candidate will get 2 minutes for an opening statement before we get into questions. Now, for most questions, candidates will have 90 seconds to respond. Rebuttals will be given at my discretion, and they will generally be 30 seconds or a minute long, depending on the question. Candidates here tonight participate in a coin toss to determine which party will go first in the opening and closing statements, as well as which candidate will be going first for those opening and closing statements. And News 5 is partnered with the Gazette, as well as the El Pomar Foundation. We thank them for their partnership tonight. And we'll be covering a range of topics for these candidates, from the defense industry, immigration, and economic issues facing voters in the 5th Congressional District. We do have an audience joining us here tonight at Centennial Hall. We thank you all for being here, and we ask you to make this a respectful and fair environment for the candidates that are up here tonight by refraining from any cheering, applauding, throwing any obscene hand gestures, or any hand gestures for that matter, until the very end of our program. I'll give you an opportunity to cheer once that begins. Candidates, I do a couple of housekeeping notes on your microphone. You will need to click the button on that microphone to speak. If the green light is on, that means it is on. You also need to turn it off once you are done speaking. That way the mic does not interfere with other folks up here tonight. Without further ado, let's get started. Democrats have opted to go first for the opening statements, and we will begin. Oh, I forgot to mention, timekeeper. Important note, right here up front. This is News Director Ryan Hazelwood. He will be holding a purple note card when you have 30 seconds left. That's when you know, and then once your time is up, I'll politely ask you to wrap up your comments. Without further ado, River Gasson will begin our opening statements. River, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. I'd like to thank the Centennial Hall for hosting us all here today. And it's great to just get the resources out there so everyone can have informed decisions and know everything they need to know about us going into an election. A little bit about myself. I was born into a world where I had reproductive rights, the rights that my mom fought for, the rights that my grandmother fought for, and then I found after the overturning of Roe v. Wade that I no longer have these rights guaranteed in every state. And now I find myself in the position where I need to fight for these rights so that way my children and my grandchildren can have better opportunities. I want to make sure that every family has the right to practice their own personal values, so that way we can have economic stability and everything that a growing family needs to be able to thrive. I'm also a third-generation educator, and with that, I have a profound understanding for the transformative power of education, the resources that are necessary for public education, from after-school programs and advancements of just critical thinking skills and math and science courses. For those of you who don't know, I'm also a scientist myself, and as both an educator and as a researcher, there's a value to all of this. There's a value to the innovations that come from space exploration, from X-ray machines to MRI machines, that improve our quality of life here on Earth. With that, I'm here to represent all of you and give us all the best opportunities possible in the 5th Congressional District of Colorado. Once again, I'm River Gasson. Thank you all for being here today.
And now we will hear from Joe Regan. Once again, you have 2 minutes for your opening statements.
Make sure I get that button. Well, thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you for hosting this debate. You know, as I get out there and about in the community, one thing I hear from both Republicans and Democrats, that they're tired of seeing the polarization, tired of seeing both parties pushed to the far right and to the far left. Now, for the last 20 years, I've served our country, I've served our nation, in the military, as a small business leader, as a nonprofit leader, working to implement actual solutions that serve the men and women that are serving in our community. I never saw myself getting involved in politics. But when we look at what's happening in our country today, we need solid leadership. We need people that are willing to stand up to do what is right, people that want to put people over politics. These are the types of things that in Congress, if I'm chosen to represent you, I will stand up for reproductive freedom, marriage equality. I will stand up against the gun lobby because I don't believe this lie that we have to choose between the Second Amendment and law and order. There's ways that we can keep our communities safe without infringing on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens like myself. We need to make sure that we're coming together more and more to bridge those gaps. I'll work across the aisle in Washington to actually implement common sense solutions on issues that are important to our community. As the only veteran in this race, I've worked in the national security community. I've worked to implement solutions for the Department of Defense. I've worked with the Department of Veterans Affairs to improve access to mental health care for our veterans, to advocate for my fellow veterans, to make sure they have access to the physical health care that they have. I'm excited to share with you our vision for how I plan to represent this district and look forward to hearing from all of you in the future. Thank you.
And now we will hear, be sure to turn your mic off.
That's right.
And now we will hear from Mr. Crank. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, and thank you to KOAA TV, the Gazette, and El Pomar for hosting this debate. Thank you, Allison. Appreciate you as well. Look, I was born and raised in southern Colorado. This has been my home my entire life. I've spent 30 years fighting for our community and for conservative values. Many of those years fighting on the radio for conservative values as well. I helped work to keep Fort Carson open and to strengthen our military installations through those years. I've worked to lower taxes and to defend the Taxpayer Bill of Rights and to fight local tax increases, many times in an often lonely battle. I've worked to support our military and our first responders. And for many of you may know, I also fought the excesses of the COVID response, the overreach of government in that, leaving my 14-year radio job when the choice was to either give in to a vaccine mandate or stay on the radio. I chose liberty. I'm going to Washington, D.C. to secure the border and to work hard to hold the Biden administration and Secretary Mayorkas accountable for their failure, their utter failure to control the border in the United States. We've also got to fix Joe Biden's broken economy. People are hurting in the United States. They're hurting. Single moms trying to decide whether they put gas in the car or we have to get our debt under control. $35 trillion worth of debt, and we seem to not be able to control that. We need to re-examine the size and the scope of the federal government and make sure that as we go forward, we get rid of things like the Federal Department of Education and other federal agencies. It is time, it is past time.
Mr. Crank,
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Williams, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank everyone who is watching this debate, and thank you to the Gazette and News Channel 5 for putting this on. I'm Dave Williams, and I'm running for Colorado Congressional District 5. I'm not only endorsed by President Trump, but also the National Rifle Association and many other conservative leaders and grassroots organizations around the country. Ladies and gentlemen, Washington, D.C. is broken. The reason you see all sorts of bad things happening right now is because we have hypocrisy. We have politicians in both political parties that are looking out for themselves and their special interest, crony friends, and those who would rather get wealthy off your backs, off the backs of the taxpayers, instead of actually serving and fighting for those who are truly in need, our fellow neighbors and everyone in the community. I happen to believe that leadership is synonymous with service to others. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, I'm a Christian, and I think it's come high time that we elect people of good moral integrity and character who are actually going to do the work of Christ, not only in our communities, but also in the halls of Congress or what other elected positions they may seek and eventually hold. The one thing I want to bring up, and I think it's important because normally I would talk about how we need to secure the border, cut taxes and spending, and defend the Second Amendment, and do all sorts of things that I think are in line with the conservative values of this district. But the one thing that we really do need to discuss is what we're seeing right now, especially as it relates to President Trump. We just saw the weaponization of the legal system against a person that should not have been convicted. And the only purpose and the only reason that it served was certainly election interference, but also to punish a political rival that is leading in this presidential race. And the reason I bring it up is because we're headed down a very dangerous path, a tyrannical path, in fact. And if we don't
Mr. Williams, that is time.
Thank you.
Thank you. This first question will go to all candidates. You will each have 90 seconds to answer this. According to the City of Colorado Springs 2023 Action Plan, 32% of people in El Paso County are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. Nearly 14% are spending more than half. What policies will you propose to try and make our area a more affordable place to live? We'll begin with Mr. Williams. You have 90 seconds.
Well, typically the issue of housing is going to be regulated to a local and state issue, and that's something for local politicians and elected officials to represent. Simply put, we don't have enough supply to meet the demand that we're facing. And then conversely, we also have an issue with folks that want to sue developers or home builders. So what I would propose maybe on a federal level is ensuring that we reform litigation law so that we cut down on frivolous lawsuits. And then ultimately we need to fix the Biden economy. We need to quit spending so much. We need to quit giving money to the government and instead give that back to the American people so that we can unleash the American economy and American enterprise.
Mr. Craig, what policies will you propose to try and make our area a more affordable place to live? You have 90 seconds.
Well, first and foremost is the Biden economy. Interest rates drive up the cost of housing, and what causes interest rates to drive up are excessive government spending. And as the government spends more money, the Federal Reserve reacts to that and raises interest rates. These are all caused by bad economic policies. So the best way to drive down the cost of housing is to make it more affordable to finance a home for America's families. And the way you do that is to get control of the spending at the federal level. We've spent far beyond excess of what they started in COVID and during COVID, and we've never, as a country, taken our foot off the gas. We need to cut back the amount of spending drastically in the federal budget and, as I said, eliminate federal agencies, federal departments. That will do more for solving housing than anything that the federal government can do.
Mr. Regan, what policies will you propose to try and make our area a more affordable place to live?
Well, I don't know about you, but for me, the biggest cost that's gone up in housing is when we look at property insurance and we look at climate-related disasters. We continue to see things like wildfires, like hail damage. Those are driving up rates for all of us. We need to make sure that we're addressing them at the federal level, making sure that we're adequately funding the departments that are looking over federal lands in our communities for wildfire mitigation efforts. If you look at what's happening here in our own community, the Colorado Springs Fire Department benefits from a federal grant for wildfire mitigation. We need to continue to strengthen those programs. We need to make sure that emergency first responders have access to the appropriate information so they can discover and fight those fires quickly before they threaten our communities. I also think we need to look at middle-income housing. As someone that's worked to address issues like homelessness and housing instability, there's a lot of programs that are out there for low-income individuals. Oftentimes we have a struggle connecting those folks with those, but at the end of the day, the majority of folks that are coming into this district are meeting our middle-class working families. And from them, we don't have those programs that can help them with their first-time home buyers. We need to help them address the issue, because one of the biggest barriers to homeownership is getting that initial down payment. Those are just some of the things I think we can do at the federal level to work across both federal, state, and local authorities to make sure we're growing responsibly so that our children and our grandchildren can continue to call this community home.
And River Gasson, what policies will you propose to try and make our area a more affordable place to live?
Thank you for that question. Well, first and foremost, I will work with state and local officials when it comes to affordable housing. And what I can do on the federal level is work with the Environmental Protection Agency and make sure they have the actual ability to enforce what is necessary to make sure that cities aren't paying the cost of extraneous resources being used when we're expanding into areas that aren't necessarily fit to expand into. There are certain areas of Colorado Springs in our district especially where, we're expanding into a desert. We don't have expendable water for certain areas, and when you sell land to property developers and those property developers are building more houses without actually being able to maintain the land, you end up just increasing the cost of housing for the overall city, as everyone else then has to pay that price. One thing I'd like to do is offer homeowners who are willing to switch out their lawns with more drought-resistant plants, give them tax subsidies, and incentives to not have to expend as many resources that end up just adding to the cost of the whole city. There are thousands of living quarters here in our district that don't have anyone living in them, and I don't feel like if anyone is owning all those properties, they should be getting any kind of tax cuts when individual people aren't seeing that benefit as well. We need to work on increasing the supply and not give all those benefits to the property developers who aren't actually working with us. Thank you.
Mr. Craig, this next question is directed at you. You point to government spending as a key issue with the economy. You've also mentioned in a previous debate wanting to extend former President Trump's tax cuts. Projections from the Congressional Budget Office project that extension could cost more than $4 trillion within the next decade and increase the nation's debt. How is this a solution to addressing affordability?
Well, the CBO is almost never right, especially when it comes to tax cuts. The Trump tax cuts, there is more revenue coming into the federal government today than ever before under the current Trump tax cuts. And the CBO doesn't take into account something called dynamic scoring. Dynamic scoring is something that takes into account that tax cuts will actually increase revenue because it's increasing economic output in a country. So the CBO is flat out wrong. They've been wrong on every single estimate that they've ever done. Whenever they've tried to do it, they were wrong on the Reagan tax cuts. They were wrong on the Kennedy tax cuts. They are just flat wrong. We need to extend the Trump tax cuts and provide certainty to the American people and to businesses so that they can actually invest in our economy.
And Mr. Williams, I'll give you 30 seconds for a rebuttal. How is this a solution for affordability?
Look, tax cuts work. Ronald Reagan did them, Donald Trump did them, the economy boomed. But conversely, we also need to cut down on the amount of spending. They go hand in hand, and you can't really do both. Otherwise, we're going to be indebting our children and their children. So not only tax cuts, but also cutting down the federal budget and eliminating wasteful spending and useless departments is what we would need to do.
Mr. Regan, this next question is directed towards you. Your campaign website says you will take on grocery chain CEOs, among other companies, who are, quote, gouging working families with higher prices and keeping the profits for themselves. What legislation would you pass to lower grocery prices?
I think when we look at that, we need to be able to work with corporate farms and making sure that we're holding them accountable for the prices that they have. As we look at the market and how that's driving up prices at the federal level, we need to start finding those novel solutions to help increase the capacity of our agriculture. When we look across the West, and one thing we didn't talk about when we're talking about development, looking at access to water rights. And this is an area that we'll have to renegotiate over the course of the next decade. Making sure that we have access to water, make sure that we're being responsible users of that. How do we leverage technology to make sure that we increase the yield of crops? These are areas that we look at that there's areas that we can make key investments through the Department of Agriculture to make sure that we're bringing down those grocery costs for folks across the way. And also making sure that we're supporting union labor. When you look at the mergers that are occurring within the grocery store chains, making sure that we're supporting those workers that are making sure that those groceries get to our table each and every day. So those are some of the things that I'd look at the federal level.
River Casson, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Respectively, there isn't really much of a rebuttal here because I do agree we need to lower the cost of groceries. I am someone who likes to eat eggs every day for breakfast, and I don't know about you guys, but they've gotten too freaking expensive. To the point where, no, I mean, it shouldn't be costing an arm and a leg just to eat every day. We need to make sure we increase the supply by giving the farmers and their workers every resource they need to be able to lower the cost of food and make sure that we all have exactly what we need to be able to, go by our day-to-day lives, and that includes affordable eggs.
Thank you. This next question will be directed at you, River. At a previous Congressional District 5 debate in February, you said you want to forgive student loans to improve the economy. At our last forum, you said you want to forgive interest rates on student loans for people who've paid off the principal. Which is it? And if you're elected and a bill gets introduced to forgive student loans completely, how will you vote?
I really like having the opportunity to explain this one, thank you. I want to forgive student loan debt for those who have paid off what they have paid in the principal. If you've taken out 80 grand and you've paid 80 grand, your student loan debt should be forgiven by now. That being said, for everyone else, we need to make sure we definitely decrease the interest rates. Otherwise, we're just going to run into this situation again and again and again. The interest rates for one of my student loans was 12% and another one is 17%. and I have friends who have seen interest rates even as high as 30%. On the federal level, they're fixed at 7 to 9%, but most student loans ended up getting loaned out into private lenders like Sallie Mae and Discover, and that is going to be an issue that we need to address if we're ever going to get the student debt crisis under control.
And I just want to follow up. If a bill is introduced to forgive student loans completely, how would you vote? Yes or no?
It would depend on what is being used to fund it, but generally I would say that's a good thing, assuming that we have everything that's in place to fund it and make sure that no one's getting left behind in that bill.
So you would vote yes?
Yes.
Mr. Regan, I'll give you 30 seconds.
Well, thank you. And, given my role as a senior leader within Norwich University, where I went to school, we've looked at not just how do we change the way that we fund higher education, but how do we make sure that higher education is adhering to the standards that they are pitching? You look at these institutions of higher learning, and the case that they're making to young people is that you will get a better job if you come to one of our institution. And we're not holding them accountable. We need to make sure that institutions of higher learning are producing high-quality graduates that are able to thrive and succeed within our workforce. And we need to make sure that we're increasing
I apologize,
access.
that is time.
Thank you.
Rebuttals are 30 seconds. I should have said that explicitly. I apologize. This next question will be directed towards Mr. Craig. You've mentioned eliminating the Department of Education. This isn't necessarily new. It's come up multiple times over the past few decades. How realistically would you get this done, or would this just be a statement piece of legislation you would introduce?
No, it's not a statement piece of legislation. There's over the last 30 years, there's been a growing movement to get rid of the Department of Education, and there's more and more, I think it's somewhere around almost 200 co-sponsors to a bill, federal bill, to eliminate the federal Department of Education. Look, we're $36 trillion almost in debt. We have to find things to cut. We can't keep passing it on to our children and grandchildren and expecting that that is even close to being moral. We're living beyond our means. We have to cut somewhere. And I would say to anyone who balks at cutting the Department of Education, well, then where would you cut? Let's find some solutions so that we aren't continuing to burden our families with debt.
Mr. Williams, you have called on families to take their kids out of public schools and homeschool them. What is your motivation here and the impact that this could have on the public school system? You have 90 seconds.
The public education system is failing our students, it's failing our families. And so often we find bloated administrations and budgets that are not helping our kids. So if it's a realistic option for you to homeschool, go homeschool. It's what I do with my kids. I know it's a good alternative for a lot of others. But if that's not a realistic option for you, then do whatever you can to spend as much time with those children, because they are being influenced and indoctrinated into a woke culture and a woke agenda that's going to undermine your values and your principles as a parent and as a conservative. So we stand by that, and we'll continue to make that call to parents.
I do want to extend a rebuttal here to Mr. Craig. You have 30 seconds.
Well, I agree. I agree. I'm fully in support of education savings accounts, school choice. It ought to be an option for every single parent. Every parent ought to control their child's K through 12 education, not the government, and certainly not the federal government.
I'd also, this next question, will go to all candidates. We're going to switch gears now and talk more about our defense industry. Colorado Springs is a hub for aerospace and defense, which play a vital role in supporting our military space operations. How will you work to foster a collaboration between the public and private sectors in this domain? Mr. Regan, we'll begin with you. You have 90 seconds.
Well, again, as the only person that served the United States military in this race, both Democrat and Republican, and have someone that has actually served in a role that was executing a space mission, more than anyone, I think I understand the importance of where Colorado Springs fits into the broader infrastructure of how our national security space infrastructure works. We need to work with developers. When we look locally at our bases, we have issues of residential and commercial encroachment on some of our military installations. This, and not just for our space industry, beyond that as well. This is prohibiting us from not just executing training missions, but also real-world missions as well. So we need to make sure that we're working with local officials to prevent that encroachment on our military installations so that we're able to do those missions. We need to make sure that we're making proper investments as well, to make sure that we're continue to bring in high-quality talent. We need to make sure that we're working with the Armed Services Committee, and where I would like to serve on, to make sure that BAH rates continue to reflect the growing cost of living within our community. And we need to make sure that when we look at other factors, so specifically when we look at how the Department of Defense measures effectiveness or as judging communities like ours to take these new missions, we need to make sure there's standardization across the board. Because when you look at what the Air Force did, when the Air Force assessed our community, it was not the same way, the way that the Army would do it. And so we need to make sure that there's standardization there so that our community can continue not only to hold the missions that we have, but to expand those missions as well as the space industry and our space mission continues.
River Gasson, how will you work to foster collaboration between the public and private sectors in the aerospace and defense industries?
Thank you for this question. I am a huge fan of space exploration, and I'm also a big fan of research and development. And I honestly believe that in order to improve our nation's readiness, we need to focus on cybersecurity, we need to focus on research, and we need to focus on the tools and technology our troops need to minimize any kind of casualties that might be lost in battle, to protect our troops, our nation, and our allies. I want to keep Colorado units here in Colorado, where we currently have the most units. That includes expanding and keeping Space Command here where it makes sense for it to be here. We have GPS at the Schroeder Air Force Base, and with NORAD, it just makes practical sense to keep all of those resources here in Colorado. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory. We need to focus on making sure that we can expand what we have and keep research and development as a top priority. Thank you.
Mr. Craig.
Well, back in the 1990s, our community faced a very serious threat. We had the threat of Fort Carson, which was the largest employer in the state of Colorado. We had the threat of that closing, and it was a real threat. And I was heavily involved in that, both as a member of congressional staff, but also later as I came back and worked for the community through the Chamber of Commerce. And one of the things that we did as a community back then, and I was very proud of it, was we worked both the federal delegation and the Chamber, the Defense Mission Task Force, other entities in the community, all worked hard and worked very closely together in a very coordinated way to make sure that we were doing everything to keep Fort Carson open. If there was a threat of any kind, whether it was encroachment or a threat from light that comes in at Fort Carson, which would stop night maneuvers and things like that, we would aggressively talk about that and work it and go to the Pentagon and work it. And so those are the kinds of things that we need to do, both in the future, and we need to get better at it. There are states like Alabama that are getting really good at that. We need to get better and be as good as we used to be at doing that very thing.
And Mr. Williams, how will you foster collaboration?
Well, it's going to be extremely important for the next congressman to have a good working relationship, not only with the defense contractors and the defense industry, but also with top military brass and fellow members of Congress, quite frankly, especially those that serve on the Armed Services Committee. That's where you're going to see the policy be shaped appropriately, because at the end of the day, our job is to help allocate public funds towards our national defense, and this is unquestionably a place where national defense is crucial for our country and certainly to our region. We need to do everything we can to ensure that we keep all of our military installations open and running and at the ready, and do everything we can to ensure that Space Command stays here and doesn't go back to Alabama if that's even on the table come 2025.
Perfect segue there, Mr. Williams. You have said that because President Trump has endorsed you, that makes you best positioned to advocate to why Space Command should be in Colorado Springs, should he be elected. What specifically would you say to convince him it should be here instead of Alabama, where he moved it to? You have 90 seconds.
Sure. Well, I'd certainly meet with him, certainly call him up and just have a conversation and explain to him why Colorado Springs is the best place to have it with respect to our talent pool, with the veteran and military community that we have here, with the aerospace industry and the innovations and technology that they're continuously advancing daily. I mean, there's a lot of great things about this community that we can win over the decision makers just on the merits. And I would explain to them that, look, Alabama is not the place to take it, and just because Joe Biden moved it back here doesn't mean you need to need to worry about moving it back to Alabama because, you know, it was a bad policy decision on the part of the prior administration. This is a great place to live and work, and we want to foster every sort of opportunity to ensure that our national defense is in our hands and nowhere else.
Mr. Crank, I'll give you 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, Space Command has never been headquartered in Alabama. The question is, we were going to move the building and the physical headquarters to Alabama. It's been in Colorado Springs. It's in Colorado Springs for a reason, because our military commanders say this is the best place to have it. And it would be a tragedy for the taxpayers if we were to move Space Command to Alabama. But I will say, that's not, Dave, that's not what you always said. You wrote a letter to President Biden. You said, of course, if the main driving force to keep Space Command in Colorado Springs is Colorado's unfettered abortion law, then it should stay located in Alabama.
Mr. Regan, when it comes to the security of our space-based assets, there's a growing concern over cyber threats. What would you propose to address these challenges and make sure our space-based capabilities stay resilient?
You know, as a veteran of the intelligence community, one of the roles that I held was actually looking at emerging threats threatening our space-based infrastructure, and not just what was threatening us domestically, but also looking abroad and doing a very broad look at what our other adversary nations were doing. There is nobody on this stage with a better understanding of the threats facing our space-based infrastructure than myself. Looking at what China and Russia have been doing in developing ground and space-based assets to attack not just our military assets, but also our commercial assets as well. As the president of New Space Global, which was an organization that was structured as looking at what is cutting edge across the space industry. You know, this was areas that we looked at what is cutting edge today, and how do we start defending against that. I think that when we look from a policy perspective, we really need to go back and look at when you think of what is governing our activities in space, these are treaties that were signed back in the 1960s, and we still have not moved forward to address the realities of what modern space looks like. And so I think working with NASA, working with the FAA, working with the Department of Commerce to build a mechanism, a policy framework that we can use internationally to make sure that we're defending our space-based assets, as well as looking to continue to invest in those technical capabilities that we need to protect those space-based assets.
This question will be directed at all of our candidates, and we will rotate order from previous questions. No matter who, I apologize. I don't think I got an answer to the last one. I apologize. 30-second rebuttal.
All right, good catch on my part. Well, I'm a big fan of making sure that we can explore the exciting and really innovating research that we have at Space Command, and I think that's a great opportunity to get our brightest minds into the military as well, and really just take advantage of all of the best resources our nation has to offer. One thing that I want to advocate for is a Space Force National Guard. That's going to be a really strong way that we can actually increase recruitment, especially when it comes to the cybersecurity front, and making sure that we, the United States, can be and will always be the leader in cybersecurity. Thank you.
All right, now we'll move on to our next question. No matter who wins these primaries or in November, voters in this district will have new representation for the first time in nearly 20 years. What's something you think Representative Lamborn did well in office, and what's something he did that you'd like to undo? Mr. Crank, we'll begin with you. You have 90 seconds.
Well, I think Congressman Doug Lamborn, who has endorsed me in this race, by the way, has served as a conservative in Congress. He has served that way. He's been a good social conservative. He's been a good fiscal conservative, and I think overall he's served our community well. He's voted against most federal spending. I wouldn't agree with every vote he's cast, for sure, and there's some I would cast differently. But I think overall he's done a very commendable job on those sorts of things. I will be much more probably of a leader on issues. That's my background. I've done media. I've been out there. I've been that person to kind of lead an effort. And I'm going to go out there to Washington, D.C. and be that person who's going to go step out and be a leader on a lot of these issues, whether it's cutting back on the size and scope of the federal government or unburdening the American family from the regulation that Joe Biden's economy is putting on them. These are things that we need to really focus on, and I do think that I would do a better job at leading in those areas, perhaps, than Congressman Lamborn has.
But is there anything specifically that you would like to undo?
that the Congressman Lamborn has done?
Yes.
No.
Mr. Williams, you have 90 seconds.
Sure, I think one of the things that needs to change in this town is to actually vote against policies that undermine our conservative principles. I mean, Jeff made a comment about how I'm going to defend the life of the unborn. You bet. I'm not voting for 1 red cent to any program, any federal agency, if it involves the taking of innocent life. That's the difference between me and Jeff. He's only pro-life when it's convenient for him. I'm pro-life all the way.
And Mr. Crank, I will give you a 30-second rebuttal.
Yeah, well, that's just a lie, Dave. I mean, that's just a lie. You're making this up. You continue to make it up. I never said I would vote for Planned Parenthood funding, and you know that I never said I would vote for it. In fact, I will defund Planned Parenthood. I'll do everything I can to eliminate any kind of funding for Planned Parenthood. It's a lie, and you know it.
River Gasson, we will go back to you for this question. What's something you think Representative Lamborn did well, and what's something he did that you'd like to undo? You have 90 seconds.
Well, to be completely honest, Doug Lamborn didn't really do too much. But one thing he did do is he sponsored many bills on the Committee of Natural Resources that outright tried to poison our water supply. You know, my name is River, and if you vote for me, you can count on me protecting the Colorado rivers. One thing I want to do is make sure we mitigate the mining of lithium, which is harming our environment, and there are alternatives for it. Sodium-ion batteries can be used as a rechargeable alternative source. It is a lot less harmful for the environment, and as someone who is a scientist who has studied environmental science, wanting to be on that Committee of Natural Resources, I will prioritize our natural resources in a way that protects us, giving you and me drinkable water, clean water, breathable air, and renewable energy sources that don't harm us. Thank you.
Mr. Regan.
As the Director of Military and Veteran Outreach for the national nonprofit Wreaths Across America, I had the opportunity to work with hundreds, if not thousands, of veteran service organizations across the country. I reached out to Congressman Lamborn's office a couple years ago when the PACT Act, this is the largest expansion of health care benefits for veterans since the creation of the GI Bill. It provides health care to veterans who are injured as a result of toxic exposure during their service to our country. And the response I got back from Congressman Lamborn's office was that it was too expensive to provide health care to veterans injured as a result of their service to our country. Let that sit in for a second. In Congress, I'll stand up to do what's right. I'll stand up even if it isn't politically advantageous, even if it doesn't meet my political agenda. I'll stand up for the folks that do the right thing, to stand up for my fellow veterans. You're not going to catch me hiding in some private club. You're going to see me out there at the soccer games with my kids. You're going to see me in the school pickup line. You're going to see me continuing to volunteer and contribute to this community as I have as long as I've lived here before. Thank you.
And Mr. Regan, you've described yourself as a centrist, moderate Democrat. Who is a Republican you would like to work with in Congress and why?
Well, I think if you look at the people most recently that have pulled together the bipartisan bill addressing our border security issues. I mean, this was a bill that came together and, again, had bipartisan support to address a critical issue that every American values. We deserve to have border security, but we deserve to have border security that's tied to common sense immigration reforms that creates a pathway to citizenship. It's those types of groups that are engaged with organizations like the Blue Dog Dems, like the Problem Solver Caucus, folks that are actually more interested in getting stuff done for the American people than they are putting the politics above the people that they're supposed to be representing. So those are the types of folks that I would look at in Congress that I would want to continue to work with.
But can you name a Republican representative you would like to work with?
Not off the top of my head, no, not right now.
River, same question to you.
Well, I'll take a good idea from anyone, really. I mean, I'm a scientist, I believe in truth and justice, and while I've been often labeled as a progressive, really I'm just out here saying what I believe is true, and I just want what's best for everyone. I want to represent individuals, not corporations. I want to work with people, and I want to represent every single person in this district, and partyship doesn't really matter at the end of the day. And as far as an individual Republican I'd be willing to work with, while I will give the Republicans some credit, they did elect the Speaker of the House, twice actually, since they've had the majority. I would hope that I can accomplish a little bit more than that, and I am fighting to get Democrats the majority of the House. So no, I can't name one, I'm sorry.
Mr. Williams, you have said that you don't need to compromise or reach across the aisle and instead, quote, need to draw a line in the sand and throw the bums out as our country's only chance is to advance an America First agenda with President Trump. You're running to represent a district that is predominantly unaffiliated. Are you willing to work with a Democrat to get legislation passed, and if so, who?
Yeah, if they want to secure the border, if they want to cut taxes and regulation, if they want to cut spending, if they want to protect the Second Amendment and protect the unborn, absolutely. I'll work with them or anyone else to do it. But it's come high time that we need to start drawing a line in the sand and fighting for our values. We are $35 trillion plus in debt. And we have so many problems on the global stage. It's a result of hypocritical politicians who say one thing and then do another. So no, I don't think we need to compromise. In fact, I think we need to start standing firm in our beliefs and not being ashamed for them.
But there's not one specific Democrat.
I really don't think there are any moderate Democrats that exist anymore, but if they want to do all those things, I'll work with them. They've quite frankly gone crazy and have lost their minds, and we don't need to work with them. We need to defeat them and start putting in a conservative majority that's going to work for the American people.
Mr. Crank, who is a Democrat you would be willing to work with?
Well, there aren't very many, I'll tell you that, that I would work with. I'll give you one example, though. I'll be the only one who will give you an example of someone from the other party in just a second. But look, I think we do need to stand up for principle. And that's what's most important, right? We have to have people who are going to go and not compromise when it's an issue of principle. But there are some things that aren't issues or matters of principle. I'll give you an example. The TikTok bill that just passed Congress. Democrats and Republicans came together and stopped the Chinese government control of TikTok. And it was a 403, I think, to 10 vote or something. That's a great way for Republicans and Democrats to come together and do something well. But I'm not going to compromise when it comes to, continuing to sell our country down the river financially. But I will say, I will work with our Democrats in the delegation here in Colorado to keep our military installations vibrant. That's who I'll work with. John Hickenlooper, Michael Bennett, on those issues, I will always stand up and work with them.
Any representatives?
Sure, the Democratic representatives from Colorado, Crow and others, who are going to help keep Fort Carson and our military installations secure. That's who I'll work with. But I'm not going to compromise with them on issues of life and smaller government and things like that. But there are some things that we have to do for the good of the American people.
At our last forum, Mr. Crank, I asked you about your ties to the Koch brothers, and you pointed to your ties in the community as to why voters should believe you'll vote in their interest, even after working for their organization, Americans for Prosperity. What issues do you not agree or align with Americans for Prosperity or the Koch brothers?
Well, for the most part, I agree with the things that they believe. They stand for limited government. I mean, they're fighting right now to elect Republicans in the United States Senate, in Nevada, in Ohio, in Montana, to get a majority of Republicans elected there. So for the most part, I stand with them on that. They asked me the very thing when I interviewed with them, what I didn't agree with on it. I gave them a couple of things. I don't totally agree with them on some of their foreign policy issues that they believe in. They're sort of a little bit more isolationist than I would be on some things. I'm a strong supporter of Israel and will always defend and support Israel. So there's a few things that I am, but generally I support the things that they do. But I do have more contributions and more donations from this district than any other candidate up here. I can guarantee that, and I've raised more money out of this district than anywhere else.
And Mr. Williams, at our last forum, you mentioned former President Trump multiple times. What issues do you disagree with him on?
There's not much. I mean, I will say this. I do think we do need to pursue a federal ban on abortion. But beyond that, we're pretty much aligned on most of the issues. I mean, one thing that does unite us is the fact that we don't agree with Americans for Prosperity. They want to allow for pro-amnesty policies, especially with potential DACA recipients. They do want to open up our open up our borders for foreign workers to drive down wages and help out corporations. I mean, that's who my opponent works for, and says that he might disagree with them on certain things. But I guarantee you, when they're dropping $500,000 in dark money to help spread lies and misinformation to get him elected, it's not because they think he's a swell guy, it's because they think they have someone in their hip pocket.
Mr. Crank, I will give you 30 seconds.
Sure. Well, actually, I don't think Americans for Prosperity has done anything negative against you. I don't know what you're talking about regarding that. Second, with regard to DACA, the Americans for Prosperity supported President Trump on DACA. He said that President Trump said he would support a solution to DACA if it included a solution to border security. Americans for Prosperity backed President Trump in that. They also backed his 3 Supreme Court nominees to the court. They also worked to get his tax cuts through.
Mr. Crank, thank you. Mr. Williams, I will give you 30 seconds as well.
Look, it's simply not true. I mean, you can Google search this. They want to give amnesty to so-called dreamers, and they want to do much more than that. The other thing to keep in mind is they raised $70 million to try and stop President Trump, and when they lost in that endeavor, which Jeff supported, they decided that they were going to put their money into other establishment candidates who would work against President Trump. That's what's going on here. And it's fine if that's what he agrees with, but let's go ahead and have our eyes wide open about the reality of what's going on here. There is an agenda by billionaires to try and buy the United States Congress and the seat.
Mr. Williams, thank you. Okay, before we move on, yes or no? Both of you said you'll vote for Trump this November. Now that he's a convicted felon, does that change your vote? Yes or no?
No, it doesn't change my vote.
No, he's not really a convicted felon.
We're going to move on
I know
to
Democrats want to laugh about it.
Mr. Williams, yes or no? Mr. Regan, you've said strong borders are absolutely a necessity and that you support a bipartisan immigration bill that has not made it through Congress. Are there aspects of the bill you would be willing to compromise on, and if so, what are they?
Well, I think the bill represents a compromise. It represents probably one of the soundest compromises that's existed within border security issues for decades. I think if we were to go further, we need to look at the reason that people are coming to this country. The reason that people are crossing the border is because they're looking to work. The vast majority of immigrants are not coming here because they're criminals. They're coming to work. And I think that we need to make sure that we understand that the fact that when they arrive here as undocumented workers, corporations are then hiring them and straight up abusing them. They're taking advantage of their status as undocumented workers, and we need to hold those corporations accountable. We need to make sure that we're going with fully funding the State Department so that we can go back to the root cause of this problem. When you look at why these people are going here, it's because there's drastic instability across Central and South America. We need to be able to use the State Department and the resources that are available there to go in there and fix the root cause of the problem. If we're really serious about immigration, and the bipartisan bill that was shot down by Republican leadership twice shows that the Republican Party is really not serious about immigration at all.
River, I will give you 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Only 30? Okay. Well, I actually am a big fan of the executive order that Joe Biden signed into office earlier today, limiting the number of migrants that can cross our border at this time. Because while I don't want closed, open borders at all, what I do believe is that what we currently have at the border is a bit of a mess. We need to actually enforce asylum-seeking process. We need to enforce caseworkers. We need to enforce judges, and we need to make sure that we alleviate that stress from our border security agents who, quite frankly, have too much on their plate right now, because there are people who are trying to come across this country, put their time, money, and resources into this nation, and we should give them the opportunity to do that and allow serious threats and people who are actually in trouble and alleviate that stress from the border security. Thank you.
Mr. Crank, you have mentioned needing to explore solutions when it comes to illegal immigration. What does securing the border mean to you, and what measures would you propose to secure it?
Well, it doesn't mean the Biden agreement, which allowed 5,000 people a day to cross, and that was somehow okay. Do we allow 5,000 thefts to be okay, or 5,000 armed robberies are okay? That was a bad deal, and the Republicans were right to reject it. And deals are, if you're going to cut a deal, you got to give something for it, and that was a bad deal. Look, the border is a mess because Joe Biden refuses to fix the border. It's that simple. There are things Congress could do, But there are things that Joe Biden could do, and it's not just sign an executive order that says, oh, it's okay if X number of people cross a day. If you cross illegally, you cross illegally. And we shouldn't tolerate that. We either have a rule of law or we don't have a rule of law. And so we need to fund the border security. We need to fund more Border Patrol agents. But most importantly, we need to get rid of the current administration and get a president, and that will be President Trump, who will institute border security. He'll put the Remain in Mexico policy back in place and will control the borders again.
Mr. Williams, I'll give you 30 seconds, and for this question as well, I will extend rebuttals to the Democratic candidates as well.
Sure. Look, we need to increase border security. We need to punish sanctuary cities. We need to ensure that we're deporting illegal aliens. But the one thing that I have a question of for my opponent is back in 2008, you said on your platform, while there are extreme positions at both sides of the spectrum, the solution lies in the middle ground that both acknowledges today's security realities and honors our country's legacy as a welcoming nation to all people. That doesn't really sound like a hawkish person on immigration. I think what we need to do is close the border, stop the invasion, deport the illegal aliens, and make sure that we cut down on these lawless sanctuary city policies.
Mr. Williams, thank you. And because he did mention you, Mr. Crink, specifically, I will give you 30 seconds.
I mean, this is what you do, right? You go get something like that that's a quote, and you try and make that into something that it's not. All I said is, somewhere is middle ground, and it begins with controlling the border and then fixing a broken system that causes people to have to wait 20 years to get into the United States. But we can't do any of that without getting border security today. That is the top priority. Once we do that, we can look at fixing a broken system so that we can allow people to come here legally. But that's different than having illegal immigration.
All right. River, I'll give you 30 seconds.
Thank you. While immigrants have always been the backbone of this country, I'm actually a third-generation immigrant myself. My great-grandmother came here from Ireland, and while Irish immigrants looked quite a bit different from the ones on our southern border, I think it is worth noting that they are still people at the end of the day. People who are here trying to seek asylum are trying to put their time, money, and resources into our economy. I want to strengthen our economy, and I want to do what's best for the American people. I want to do what's best for our country. And I do believe that does mean expanding our resources and expanding that into immigrations as well.
Mr. Regan.
I think it's interesting that we're talking about being pro-law and order, and yet the bipartisan bill that I've discussed several times actually has the support of the Border Patrol Association. So when we talk about being pro-law and order, why are we not listening to the law enforcement officials that are actually on the ground doing the work and implementing the solutions that they recommend? And I think that's one of the things that it's not serious. It's more about, for you, it's more about what is politically advantageous than what is right.
Do I get a rebuttal?
I did not hear specific to.
He said you.
He said you, but did not. I did not hear a personal attack, so we'll move on. Mr. Williams, do you support mass deportation, and how would you support that? How would you propose that working?
We have 11 million, even probably greater than that, illegal aliens in this country. We do need to deport them. There's no two ways about it. I know that might offend some of the Democrats in the audience right now, but that's a fact, and we can do that by partnering with local law enforcement, with the National Guard, and the military if need be. But we have a crisis right now, and it is fundamentally hurting our country. It is harming American workers, and it is making our streets unsafe. So there's no other choice. But the first thing we need to do is close the border, and then work on all the other things that follow.
Mr. Crink.
First and foremost is border security. Until we do that, we can't worry about really anything else. That has to be job number one. But look, we have people who broke the law and they are here. If we accept that and just allow them to stay here with no consequence, guess what will happen? What happens when you allow your window to continue to be broken over time? People keep breaking your window. We can't allow that to happen. We will have to deal and deport people who came to the United States illegally.
Show of hands, all candidates. Do you support a pathway to citizenship I know this has been brought up slightly on the Republican side, do you support a pathway to citizenship for children of undocumented immigrants, also known as Dreamers, under the DACA program?
It would depend.
I will give you 30 seconds.
Well, it depends on if that's part of a deal where there's border security, then possibly. But it has to be border security as part of that deal.
Mr. Williams?
I mean, I can't believe what I just heard. No, the answer is no. If, as an example, your parents were to rob a bank and then they got arrested, do you think the police are going to let the kids keep the money? No, that's not how this works. You break the law, there are consequences, and that might sound harsh, but our priority is to Americans first.
May I? Very quickly.
30 seconds, and then I am going to extend.
President Trump supported a solution to DACA for Dreamers, and as long as it included border security, I support what President Trump supported.
Mr. Regan?
They're kids. They had no choice in coming here. Of course, this is the only home many of them have ever known. And just because their parents made the decision in the middle of the night that it was a better option to cross our border because that was the best course of action for them as a family, we should treat them compassionately. We should give them the opportunity to live the American dream, which is the only thing that they've ever known. When I think about compassionate immigration policy, it does include border security, but it also looks at these folks as people. And when you see it each and every day, when you've actually worked with folks like my interpreter, who leveraged the special immigrant visa program to come and now is here in the United States with his family, living his American dream.
And River?
Thank you. Last year, a good friend of mine that I grew up with gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. And that wouldn't have been possible if she didn't come with her dad to this country from Peru when she was 3 years old. She grew up and spoke English as her first language and learned Spanish later on to better connect with her roots. And after 20 years, after getting her law degree here, after working in the United States legal system, after working for healthcare rights, and after marrying an American citizen and having kids here,
River, thank you.
she then finally became citizenship after 20 years.
Thank you. River, this next question will be directed at you. You are the only candidate here tonight who has said they would not support sending aid to Israel. What about the recent aid package passed by the House do you agree and disagree with? You have 90 seconds.
90 seconds is not enough time to fix the Middle East, I'm going to be honest with you there. So the conflict between Israel and Palestine is far older than anyone else in this room, several thousand years old, as a matter of fact. What I do know is that we need to search for a peaceful solution, and I do believe that is going to be a two-state solution, where both Israel and Palestine are recognized as two sovereign states. It's not going to be easy, but that is a solution that we need to work towards, and as the United States, as a nation that promotes peace and justice, that is the path that we need to guide as well. Thank you.
Mr. Regan, I'll give you 30 seconds.
Well, I think we have to remember that the reason that Hamas attacked Israel in the first place was because they saw their influence continuing to be decreased in the region. Iran has seen that as more and more allies continue to support Israel and normalize those relations, it's taken Iranian influence away from the region as well. And so I think as we look at this issue, we've got to make sure that by strengthening Israel, but also making sure that we're supporting the Palestinian people, the enemy here is Hamas. And we need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can, and the Netanyahu government needs to do more to show restraint to further that gap between the peace-loving Palestinian
Mr.
people
Regan, thank you.
and Hamas.
Mr. Williams, your family's company Ties to China has been the focus of a recent campaign ad. You have called the reporting related to this fake news, but the company's LinkedIn page specifically says it has manufacturing undertaken in the US and China. You have posed yourself as the America First candidate. What should voters make of your business dealings?
I mean, it's a ridiculous question, and it was put forward by crank supporters and dark money groups to try and make you think that President Trump is somehow not supporting me when he is. Fact remains, I am the America First candidate, and look, I don't know what to tell you. I guess I hope you know, Jeff or any of his backers don't buy from Amazon or something. I mean, look, it's the reality that we have a global economy, but most of our manufacturing was done here in the United States.
but has your family done business in China?
Well, we've done business all over the world to include manufacturing partners in China, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, the microphone you're speaking from was probably manufactured in China. These seats were probably manufactured in China. The fact remains, if we're going to be successful in American enterprise and American business, then we need to focus on American first principles, and that's why Donald Trump supports our campaign.
Mr. Krink?
Well, those ads aren't paid for by me, but what exactly is untrue in them? I'll give my time to Mr. Williams.
Sure, Jeff, what's untrue about them is that I am the America First candidate. There is absolutely nothing wrong. I'm glad the Democrats support Jeff Crank. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, but that is true. I'm the America First candidate. We've had dealings all over the world. So has Donald Trump. Are you somehow going to say that Donald Trump is not America First because he's done dealings in China? It's a ridiculous.
Reclaiming
question.
my time.
It's
Reclaiming
welcome discussion.
Reclaiming my time. I would just say, what is wrong with the ads? What is untrue about the ad? That's all.
Mr. Williams, would you like?
I'm not entirely sure why we're going down this line of questioning, because it does show the bias that the media and the people that want to buy this district. The fact is, Donald Trump supports our campaign, and we have dark money groups and the media that want Jeff Crank to win this race. And he might deny it, but he is the preferred candidate of the Denver Post. He's the preferred candidate of Colorado Progress Now. He's the preferred candidate of many of the folks that have been screwing you guys over and not telling you the truth. I mean, we have the Gazette here, who has been openly trying to help him get elected. These are baseless attacks, and they're not true. Everything in it is unequivocally wrong.
On behalf of the Gazette, their editorial division is separate from the news operation, which is putting on this debate. Mr. Crank, I'll give you 30 seconds, and then we're going to move on.
And the Colorado Springs Gazette was the only newspaper in 2020 in Colorado to endorse Donald Trump.
Yeah, and then they wanted to support Nikki Haley. I remember Viz Bezdik writing his own column about how we need to get rid of Donald Trump. That's the type of editorialization that you're getting from this paper. 2020, he was the incumbent. 2024, he was not the incumbent, and we had a robust presidential primary where Jeff Crank supported Nikki Haley. I mean,
I did not
these
support
things
Nikki
change.
Haley. I did not support.
He
That's
did.
a lie, Dave.
He absolutely did. He applauded the decision to support Nikki Haley.
Did I support Nikki Haley, or
You
did I applaud a
You,
decision?
In December of 2023, you said it was courageous, and you applauded the decision.
Did I say I endorsed Nikki Haley?
You said you applauded and supported
Did I say I
All
endorsed
right,
Nikki
Mr.
Haley?
Crank and Mr. Williams.
It's a
appreciate
lie,
healthy
Dave.
discussion.
Move on.
We're going to go ahead and
Why
move on.
would you applaud
We're all
something?
Mr.
supporting
Williams,
Donald
we're
Trump
going to
now.
move on.
Okay, we're good.
This question will be directed at both of you. We're going to switch to abortion now. You have both stated you are pro-life, but polling shows in Colorado voters do want access to abortion, but want some restrictions. How would you vote if a national ban came up in Congress? Mr. Crank, you have 90 seconds.
I am 100% pro-life. I'm endorsed by the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life Candidate Fund. I served on Life Network's board here in Colorado Springs. I received the Champion of Life award from them. I oppose, despite what my opponent tries to say, I oppose Planned Parenthood funding in all of its forms. I would support, and I will always vote to respect and to protect human life. That's just something people need to know about me. You may not like that, but I at least have to tell you up front where I am on the issue. I am pro-life. I would be pro-life if I was a state legislator or a city council member or a private citizen, and I'm going to be pro-life as a member of Congress.
Mr. Williams.
Look, I would vote for any sort of restriction at the federal level like I did at the state level. I mean, but this is what needs to be talked about. This is a good issue right now. Earlier in this debate, you heard Jeff say he wouldn't do anything differently necessarily from Doug Lamborn. Doug Lamborn voted for $500 million in Planned Parenthood funding and many other abortion policies and National Defense Authorization Act bills that he voted for. Again, you want to know who's lying and not being truthful with you? It's not me. I've been consistent. It's my opponent who will vote for things that he doesn't necessarily agree with because that's how Washington works in his opinion.
Mr. Crane?
Yes,
30
well,
seconds.
first of all, I said I would support the NDAA and that there shouldn't be social matters put in the NDAA. That's what I said. Now, somehow you twisted that into saying that that I somehow was going to support Planned Parenthood funding. That is not what I said. If you want to be with the people who voted against the NDAA, you go right ahead. It just passed in committee, in the Armed Services Committee 2 weeks ago. It passed 54-1, I believe was the vote, and the one Democrat who voted against it was Ro Khanna from California.
Mr. Crane, thank you.
He's a liberal.
No, I mean, this is an important distinction here. He's trying to tell you that we should
Mr.
vote
Williams,
against it.
you've had your time.
No, this is important. This is, I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Williams,
no, this is
please
important.
respect.
Excuse me, this is important.
Mr. Williams,
This is important, Allison.
you will have 2 minutes and a closing statement.
No, this is important. He
Mr.
will vote
Williams.
for abortion in an NDAA. He's telling you we shouldn't have it.
Audience,
Thank you. I know the Democrats don't like me. I get
Well-
it. That's fine.
we are going to head over to the Democrats now. River Gasson, an initiative is on the ballot this November to enshrine the right to an abortion into Colorado's Constitution. Do you support this ballot initiative, and what message do you have for the voters in El Paso County who recently voted opposite of the rest of the state on a ballot initiative adding abortion restrictions? You have 90 seconds.
Not only do I support reproductive health care, not only do I support Proposition 89, I personally collected signatures to make sure that Proposition 89 would be on our ballot. I want to make sure reproductive health care is enshrined. I want to make sure it's protected and that people can have children on their own terms and give those kids every resource that they want to give them with economic stability and the ability to just do all that. You know, it's a lot of work to raise kids. Watching the two children bicker here kind of remind me why I'm pro-choice. But rest assured, you can count on me to vote yes on Proposition 89 and make sure that we can have abortion legalized and reproductive health care legalized on the federal level as well. Thank you.
And Mr. Regan, same question to you.
I find it ironic that the two people that are sitting here saying they want less intrusive government are the same people that want to put bureaucrats and judges in our doctor's office with us. I mean, this is insane. When we talk about the most basic principle of the First Amendment, it comes down to body autonomy. And both of you have said, well, the government shouldn't be involved in our lives. Then why do they belong in the doctor's office? And when you look at what's happening in Texas, in Alabama, and in Arizona, that's exactly what's happening, is that women are suffering because their doctors are not allowed to make decisions in their best interest because they are afraid that they are going to be persecuted and prosecuted for doing what's in the best interest of their patient. So I think that is a yes, or a no. I would 100% support to legalize Roe v. Wade and put that into federal law.
This question will be for all candidates. Recently, the DEA moved to reclassify marijuana from a Schedule I to a Schedule III drug. There's also renewed effort to legalize recreational cannabis in Colorado Springs. Would you support legalizing cannabis at a federal level? Why or why not? River, we'll begin with you.
So it's important to make sure that we prioritize mental health and make sure we have resources in place so that way anyone who is struggling with addiction has every resource they need to make sure that they can fight that. But with all that in mind, the legalization of cannabis will help us have regulation over it. We'll actually be able to collect tax revenue of it. And we've seen what we've been able to do in Denver and in Manitou Springs and the tax revenue that we're able to achieve from that. This is money that goes towards public education, something that I'm a very strong proponent of. And this is money that goes towards fixing our roads. And I don't want to spend any more money on fixing my car because I hit another pothole. So it'd be nice if we have that tax revenue here in Colorado Springs as well. And a close friend of mine is circulating a petition to make sure we can have recreational cannabis legalized in the city of Colorado Springs. So yes, I will support a legalization of cannabis on the federal level.
Mr. Regan.
I don't think I have any particularly strong feelings one way or the other. I think that when we look at how we handle substance misuse within the court system, there's a lot of room that we can do. One of the things that I've worked on extensively is looking at alternative justice pathways for those individuals that are struggling with substance misuse. And actually looking at ways that where criminal activity is tied directly to drug use, providing those resources to help people deal with the substance misuse component of that without actually having to deal with prosecution and incarceration. At the federal level, when I think of legalizing marijuana and other substances. Again, not opposed to it, but definitely as the only person on this stage that's ever held a TS-SCI, it's definitely not something that I've really thought much about.
Mr. Crank.
I've actually held an SCI, yeah. But first of all, the only people more addicted to some drugs are the politicians that are addicted to the tax revenue that those drugs bring. And I don't like the idea of people wanting to legalize a drug because it gives us more tax revenue and makes government bigger. That's dumb. No, I do not support the legalization of marijuana at the federal or at the state level. I think it's a very bad idea. Marijuana is a gateway drug. It leads to other drug use. And, you know, we are being ravaged right now in Colorado by fentanyl and by other drugs that people started on marijuana, many of them, and they move on to heavier drugs. And that is not a good thing for humanity or for citizens to be involved in. And lastly, I would say there's a big difference between Colorado Springs and Denver in homelessness, in a lot of the problems that we see, even in crime. And part of that deals with the fact that we have not allowed recreational pot shops within the city of Colorado Springs. Good on us.
And Mr. Williams.
Look, I didn't support the legalization of marijuana here when it was up for a vote in 2012. I think it was a mistake from the start, and I think that's borne itself out to be the case. When we have a record number of homeless transients coming to Colorado and engaging in criminal offenses in order to get more money so that they can get their hands on marijuana. I think it's led to a degradation here in our communities, certainly in Denver. When I was in the state capitol, we not only saw people openly smoking recreational marijuana out in the public, but they were doing other drugs as well. I remember specifically before a field trip came to the Capitol, State Patrol would actually have to go out and sometimes pick up used syringes. This is not the type of community that we should be wanting, and we shouldn't be encouraging that type of activity. So no, I wouldn't support it.
All right, we are getting towards the end of our program here. What an eventful night. In the interest of civility, Republicans, what's one thing you admire or respect about your opponent? Mr. Crank, you have 90 seconds.
About Dave?
Yes.
Okay, great. I think, Dave has a lot of tenacity. I'll give him that. He's got a wonderful wife and family and kids, beautiful kids. And, he's very committed to the beliefs that he has.
Mr. Williams.
I mean, he's got a decent radio voice. I'll give him that. It's certainly true. I mean, look, he's been running for 20 years, or wanting to be in Congress for 20 years. And I got to give him some respect for being persistent in doing so. But I will say something nice about our Democrat friends over here, and it's probably going to be an insult to Joe, but I called him the most Republican-looking Democrat I've ever seen. So.
Mr. Regan, what do you admire or respect about River?
Her commitment to education. I think since the very beginning of this race, I've really admired River's commitment to supporting education at the higher level. I think that she's built a tremendous amount of experience. And as a candidate, I've really enjoyed running against her and having her push me to be better aware of the issues.
Thank you.
Well, I certainly like having Joe in this race. We're definitely very competitive, and we're also, not bickering as much as the Republican Party over there. On the downside, that doesn't really give us as much attention as the Republicans are getting. But what I do admire about Joe is your phenomenal public speaking skills, honestly. I'd like to adopt those someday. Thank you.
All right, we are going to enter into our closing statements now for tonight. As we mentioned at the beginning, Democrats will be going first, Republicans will be going second, and Mr. Regan will begin for the Democratic candidates. You have 2 minutes.
Well, Dave, you mentioned being the America First candidate. And in the previous debate, I had mentioned straight up that I think that is 100% nonsense. I think if we were really to look at what an America First candidate looks like, they'd be someone that would support the Department of Veterans Affairs to make sure that our veterans have equal access to health care. They'd be supporting public education to make sure that regardless of what zip code you live in, that every child has an opportunity to thrive. I'd see an America First candidate would be someone that would invest in our Department of Defense, in our service members, our veterans, our families. When we look here in Colorado Springs, we attract some of the best and brightest service members across the country. We need to make sure that we're investing in our military families, in our military spouses. If you were really an America First candidate, you'd making sure that regardless of your financial situation, you would have access to high quality health care. That's what America First looks like. If you look at my experience over the past 20 years, not just in the military, but looking at the work I've done in the nonprofit sector, actually implementing solutions that drive down the cost of health care for individuals, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this country. When you look at how I've been able to advocate on behalf of my fellow veterans and how to be able to build those coalitions across the aisle, I want to go to Congress to work across the aisle to get stuff done for everyday Americans. I want to make sure that our service members are not getting put into harm's way needlessly. And I think that those are the elements. When we think of what this community needs, as a community, we want leaders of strong character. We want people that are going to stand up and put what is right over what is politically advantageous. And we want people that put what is right for the people that put them there, that represent the people over their own political ambitions. I'm excited to continue to go along this race. I'm excited to continue to engage with voters across this county and talk about how common sense solutions can be made to support everyone in this community. So thank you.
And now we will hear from River Gasson for her 2-minute closing statement.
Thank you. Once again, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for taking the time to be with us today, especially on, it's an evening. Most people want to be at home with their families. These are scary times right now in our nation. I'm not sure how many people here have read the book The Handmaid's Tale, but Margaret Atwood took inspiration from real life events that happened. And it scares me when I see the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, say things similarly to what you heard from Joseph Stalin shortly before he took away the rights for abortion of Romanian women during the Soviet Union. It got down to a point where they had to take a pregnancy test every month, and if they didn't test pregnant, they then had to explain why. This also led to an overwhelming system that had too many children, too many kids up for adoption, and no one was able to care for their families. What I see from the Republican Party is a party that wants to work towards that. It becomes a matter of trying to take control of women's bodies more than actually caring for babies. If it was about the children, we would be fighting for affordable childcare. We would be fighting for affordable health care. We would be putting all of the resources we can put into education to make sure everyone has the best opportunities possible. But it's not about children. It's about control. And that's what I see, and that's why I'm here fighting. I'm here to fight for the people, not fight for big corporations, and I want to make sure individuals have every opportunity they need to thrive and have the abilities to do whatever they want with their lives. That's what the American dream is all about. I'm here to represent you and the resilience that I see in this district, and I would be absolutely honored to represent Colorado's 5th Congressional District and make our voices heard in Congress. Thank you.
And now we will move to our Republican candidates for their closing statements. Mr. Williams, you'll be going first. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. Look, I think there's one thing that Jeff and I will agree on. This election is going to be decided between myself or Jeff, and that's going to be decided here on June 25th. No disrespect to the Democrats, but this district is going to elect a conservative Republican or not. And I think the question that you have to ask yourselves is, what kind of Republican Party do you want? Do you want a new Republican Party that focuses on America, that focuses on actually delivering for the grassroots and for the people as opposed to the corporations and the big business and the special interests that it so often does? I mean, let's face it, the reason we have a broken system isn't just because of Democrats, it's because of weak Republicans who capitulate and compromise. Those Republicans are not supporting me. They're not. In fact, they're spending millions, or over $1 million, collectively to try and buy this election and trick you into voting for someone who isn't going to be as strong, right? He won't be as worse as Nancy Pelosi, I'll grant him that. But if you're looking for new leadership that's actually going to fight for you each and every day, in Congress and vote to secure the border, fight to defend the Second Amendment, like I will since I'm endorsed by the National Rifle Association, protect the unborn, support our military and our veterans, then support me. We can't go back to a Republican Party or failed leadership that is of the Bush era or the Dick Cheney era, or listen to people like Mitt Romney or those people. They have failed us continuously, and that's why we have $35 trillion in debt. It's time for a new birth of leadership. That's why there are so many people around the country who are waking up and voting for new leaders in the Republican Party that are going to stand for them and not the crony capitalists, not the folks who are going to sell them down the river, because quite frankly, that's what Republicans in Washington, D.C. have been doing for far too long, and it's come high time that we change that course right here in this district. Please vote for me and visit my website at daveforcolorado.com.
And Mr. Crank.
Well, thank you, and thanks to KOAA TV, the Gazette, and the El Pomar Foundation for sponsoring this. Thanks to everybody for coming, and for everybody watching online as well. You know, I talk about being grassroots. I've walked over 1,000 doors talking to voters over the last couple of weeks, several months actually. And it's interesting. Most of them look at me and they say, "Oh, I know you. You're the guy on the radio." And I say, "You know, you'll hear things," but you say, "You know what? I know you." And the reason they say that is because I've been in this community fighting for 30 years. Sometimes it was a lonely battle. Sometimes it was against Republicans. Sometimes it was against Republican tax increases, and I was one of the very few people standing and fighting. And that's the kind of person I'll be in Washington, D.C. Look, I want to go to Washington, D.C. to help represent the community that I love, the one that I helped work to save Fort Carson, the one that I helped work to defend Tabor and try to keep taxes low here in our community, the one where I fought the legalization of marijuana in Colorado Springs. That's the community that I want to represent in Washington, D.C. I want to go there. I want to secure the border. I want to fix Biden's broken economy. I want to get our debt under control. And I want to eliminate government barriers to the success of the American people. That's important. Look, I'm endorsed by over 20 military leaders in our community. The Colorado Springs Police Protective Association, conservative leaders like former governor, the last Republican governor of Colorado, Bill Owens, Joel Heffley, Doug Lamborn, Hank Brown, the Susan B. Anthony Candidate Fund, because I'm pro-life. I would ask for your vote. I would ask for your support, because I want to go to Washington and continue to fight like I have fought in this community to make this a better place. I'm one of you. I'm going to go and fight. Thank you.
Let's give a round of applause to all of our candidates here tonight. And a big thank you to the Gazette and the El Pomar Foundation for coordinating this debate. Reminder, ballots being sent out this week. You have until June 25th at 7 p.m. to return that ballot or vote at a voter service and polling center in the area. Thank you all for joining us tonight.